month, NASM is giving you free courses. That's right, free courses each month just for being part of the NASM family. Learn about everything ranging from nutrition to strength, weight loss to stress relief, and everything in between. Click the link in the bio for information and to claim your free course before they're gone.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Master Instructor Roundtable. I'm Marty Miller, Regional Master Instructor, here with my dear friend, as always, fellow Regional Master Instructor, Miss Wendy Batts. Wendy, how you doing today?
I'm great, Marty. How are you?
Awesome. You know, as I always say, it's my favorite time of the week. I get to hang out with you for, 45 minutes or so and talk to our NASM friends about a cool topic. And this week, we're going to go over acute variables.
Yes, I think this is a topic that even though we talk about often, I think in every one of our webinars that they're mentioned in some shape or form or whatever it is you want to say, I think that we wanted to actually really specifically talk about it because if you're not really focusing on the acute variables, you really may not be getting the adaptations or your clients may not be seeing the results that you're hoping for. And so I think really just spending time on each phase, talking about the specifics of what acute variables are and why they serve a specific purpose per phase is going to be super, super important. And I'm excited about today.
Yeah. And, you and I know how in depth the OPT model can get and how we can really just, over the last 15, 20 years we've worked with it, always find new ways to create cool content and use it. But if you go back to the basics of making sure that you're focused on those acute variables, boy, oh boy, does that make a difference in the workout as well as the outcome that someone's going to elicit from that workout.
And I know you hear this too, Marty. Oftentimes, I think with trainers, they want to try to become so creative in their exercise selection, which is important for sure. However, if you really take a step back, you can use the same exercises over and over in each phase, maybe with certain modifications based on, something being unstable versus stable. But if you, especially the tempo, if you spend time focusing on the tempo, the change, the difficult, like how difficult the exercise is, I mean, it really can make a substantial difference and how hard the program is. So again, we're not trying to quote kill our clients, but if you're, for example, doing a push-up and you're doing a phase 1 push-up versus a phase 3 push-up, there's significant difference. And to me, the phase 3 push-up is a piece of cake when you're trying to do like in comparison to a phase 1.
Yeah. And, we've talked about this at length in other Master Instructor Roundtables. I'm sure we will get into this conversation again, but, a lot of people, they'll tell you, oh, I have to be in the gym for X amount of time. And I do so many sets and I can do so many push-ups or pull-ups. And generally I know that, I say this jokingly, but you and I are like, no, you can't. And the reason is are you doing it with ideal form and technique of the kinetic chain? But then also, are you truly controlling the acute variables, the time under tension, the work to rest ratios? And I have lost more workout partners because I stick to the acute variables and they're just like, no, this is like, wait a minute, what do you mean? It's time to go again. And I'm not going slow enough. And, so it's a humbling experience. But at the end of the day, I'm there to elicit the best physiological outcomes. So why would I not stick to the science? And the science shows us that these acute variables are crucial.
Yes. And I think, if we look even at our next slide and we talk about truly what we're going to cover today, that's what it is. We're going to talk about the definition of the acute variables. We're also going to talk about why each acute variable plays such a significant role in each phase of training and what makes them unique and what makes them so important. And the fact that NASM actually did pretty much all the work for you, that if you have a blank template and you're looking at how many sets, how many reps, how much intensity, everything like that, we've literally given you the answers. All you have to do is choose the exercise and then do what it tells you to do. And I think sometimes, trainers think that training and program design is hard when it really shouldn't be. It's about your creativity. It's about the assessment. Your clients are going to tell you what they need by how they move. And even though they may not verbally tell you, if you understand the assessment process and you can identify the compensations, then the program design should be super simple for you, because you have a solutions table to reference on exercises of, well, basically what to roll, what to stretch, and then some ideal exercises to help with those imbalances. Then we gave you all the acute variables anyway. All you have to do is follow the guide. It's
learn by doing,
important.
right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and the thing to me is, when I first saw the OPT model, I had that light bulb moment, because I knew about stability and power, and there was a lot that I learned, but I kind of had an idea that there had to be a system. And when I saw the OPT model, I'm like, oh my God, there is the reproducible system. So the OPT model is like the toolbox, but the acute variables to me is like the recipe book. If I want to elicit a very specific response, I will not get it if I don't follow that recipe. And the acute variables is your recipe. Do this for this amount of time under this tempo with this work to rest ratio, and you get great results.
I know. I mean, I'm the same way. And it is. I mean, and I think that was one of the reasons we wanted to spend today talking about it, because it really doesn't have to be difficult. And I know trainers struggle. We see it on our Facebook page. We get emails all the time, and they're like, I don't know where to start. And that is, it's concerning, because a lot of you guys are certified. I know this stuff. It's just they're scared now to implement it. And I'm telling you, out of using this model or overusing this model for 20 years, all you have to do is just use it. If you follow it, you use it, your clients will respect you, because you're telling them, hey, we're going to go really slow. We're going to try to get, I want your form to be exactly like this. And if you start to, something starts to fail, then we're going to try to adjust it, because it's super important that we get you to move this way. So therefore this muscle's working, and this is what, this is happening, or this will help you get out of pain or discomfort or whatever it is that you need to say. It's just, you have to be able to understand it. There's a purpose behind everything that we're doing. And then, like I said, you don't have to give them a huge anatomy lesson. Just tell them, more than just because I said so, there really is a purpose behind it. So, but that actually brings us to the next slide. And Marty, you want to go over just when we talk about acute variables, if you don't, we can talk about them all day, but if you don't understand what they are, then that's problem number one.
Correct. So we'll go through the definitions, so just we're on the same page, then we'll go through them independently as we progress here. So the acute variables, that's a term that you're going to hear with NASM all the time. And that's really, like I said, what makes up the programming outside of the exercise that you choose. So these are the crucial components, important components you see here, that specify how each exercise is to be performed, also known as exercise training variables. So anything in a program that can be manipulated. So like Wendy said, let's talk about a push-up. Is it the repetition range? Is it going to be the tempo, the time under tension? Is it going to be the rest interval, the amount of sets? And so those are the things that really you factor in once you've picked your exercise and your phase of training. You then take the exact acute variables that you need for that phase, and then you follow it. We give you rep ranges, and we'll discuss what that means by the range. But that's how you take a program and get stabilization endurance, or you get a strength endurance outcome, or you get hypertrophy, max strength, or power. Very specific variables that we have to control. And what I tend to see in a lot of programming, Wendy, and I'm sure you see this, is you see somebody that does, okay, that was maybe a stability exercise, that could be strength, now they're over to power. In my term, I'm going to use my term, they're exercising, they're burning calories, and they're doing things. But these are training variables. So you'll see that the last two words of that first paragraph. We are here to train, which means we are targeting very specific physiological outcomes based on science. That's why you don't see exercise variables. You see exercise training variables, because we are using the science to elicit specific responses within the body. And we know what needs to happen to make that change physiologically.
No, these are all great points. And, I'm sure you guys have heard this too. Anybody can do a push-up. It's just, are you doing it correctly? And yes, you don't always, even if somebody's doing a modified version or a quote, a regressed version, or even a advanced version, if you're not drawing in, you're not in the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints, you let your head fall forward, you're not coming up and adding quote the plus, and so there's a winging going on, then you're feeding into compensations that we're trying to target and get that client to train out of, if you will, for better movement quality. And that overall, to your point, Marty, it's not about exercises. It's a training system to help someone move with better quality, move with better form, and be able to change and move that what they're doing in the gym into activities of daily living. So therefore, they're reducing the chances of injury. They're increasing performance in anything that they're doing with their family, friends, or whatever. And they're going to look better. I mean, all in all, I mean, it's one of those things. And, Marty, you and I hear this too a lot in our workshops, like, oh, I can hold a plank for a minute. And I'm like, okay, perfect. Then just show me. I'm going to time you, but I want you to show me. And their feet are together, their heads forward, their hands are together like they're praying. They're looking down at their feet, but they feel it in their stomach. However, ideally, if they were drawing in, their glutes are squeezed, their feet shouldn't be touching, their back should be flat, and then they hold that, and you go down and do it for repetitions. It's way harder to activate, relax, especially with the weak core, because you're trying to get everything to learn to turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off, and move with quality movement than it is to prop up on your arms and just time yourself. And so I think oftentimes, taking yourself, and especially as trainers, stepping back and analyzing your own movement patterns and slowing things down, it's a wake-up call. I knew it was for me, because I could throw up exercise, heavy weights and do certain things. But then when I slowed it down, I couldn't lift that weight. My form went south pretty quickly. And it was good for me to take steps back and get, ideal movement in phase 1. So therefore, when I got back to where I was seeing an increase in weight, an increase in my power. And it was actually fun to see by just spending just a couple weeks that I needed to clean up some of my horrible movement patterns that I had, that I had started to show.
Hey, we're instructors, but we're humans too. We
Yes.
still have faulty movement patterns. So,
yes. Yes. Okay. So let's talk really, quickly again about the important components in the program design. We're not ever trying to take your creativity out of your programming. That's what makes a trainer unique. That's what makes you very special. However, if you want to, as Marty said, really focus on specific outcomes, you want to think about what is it that would make a phase 1 exercise, quote, a phase 1 exercise, or what makes phase 1 different from phase 2 or phase 5 or whatever phase you're in. And so I think it's very important as trainers to know your clients. If somebody really is not familiar with the gym, they've never worked out, it's okay to repeat exercises, especially if they struggled the first few times you did those particular exercises with that client. However, if you're someone like myself, I love being in the gym. I like doing different things. That's what motivates me. That's what makes it, quote, challenging. Then it's okay to switch up the exercises. And in your exercise selection is part of your acute variables as well. Whatever you're choosing is also something, because you're manipulating a program to, hopefully to get specific muscles to fire appropriately and within a specific pattern. And so when we're really focusing on slowing down the tempo and really working on movement patterns, we're not only working on the prime mover. It's not about just doing a chest press. It's making sure that the rotator cuff is in a good position, that all of the pecs, pec major, pec minor is working, the anterior delt isn't being stressed, that you've got full available range of motion and you're able to produce that movement with the best quality possible. I think that's one thing that sometimes we forget. It's not how fast and how many can you do, it's how many can you do. And again, we'll say this 1,000 times today, it's quality over quantity. And then, just realize that every specific phase has a specific adaptation, and all adaptation means is it has a specific goal. You're going to reach a specific outcome if you follow it. So therefore, when you progress it, then as we've said about undulating periodization, go down and play within the phases once you've, quote, graduated and shown that you can move upward. But just remember, it's not in the best interest of anyone to go up to phase 5 when you're really in phase 2, just because you had a really bad day and you want to throw stuff around.
And I think it's also important, to find your voice and to be able to speak to the model as it makes sense to you. So that way your clients are more likely to want to follow the model, because they're going to come in with their thoughts and their goals that may be totally off of where they're at currently. Wendy knows this. I have my 3 rules. Rule number 2 is give them what they want while you give them what they need. So if I can talk about the model about improving human movement and tie it to why, then we're going to have you move under load. Then we're going to have you move at high speed. That's going to make sense to them, right? And if you can then have fun and be creative, then they're more likely to stick to the acute variables, because at the 40,000 foot view, you said, listen, we need to do this first. We need to get you moving slower, under control, getting the stabilization muscles to work, to hold up your posture, or to whatever you want to talk about. Then we're going to get you to move that same way now that you're moving well under load because of this. And then we're going to get you to move at higher speed. You're not going to have people argue with that as far as logic goes. And then when you start to bring in these acute variables, you're reinforcing that bigger picture that you have a system. You're going to make it fun, but you understand how to progress and manipulate the program to give them the absolute best results actually in the shorter period of time, because you're going to get better results when you're focused on a phase of training than just randomly jumping around and doing different things.
And I often use the house. I mean, I know that it's been in many of our textbooks. I know when we teach courses, we bring this up, but you can actually explain it to your clients this way as well. After you do an assessment, if there's a bunch of compensations, you just say, hey, we've got to really focus on your foundation, because you start talking about stabilizers and prime movers and stuff. They have no idea what you're talking about. However, you just say, hey, you know what? You can have a mansion and you place that in the middle of a sand pit. You're going to see how long that mansion stays looking as awesome as it did day one, versus if you had a very strong and firm foundation and then you built the house that your dream home on top of it, and think of that as the strength. And then you added all the bells and whistles, the doors, it's still necessities. Like you need to be able to have doors and windows and things to make the house functional. That's your power. And so really you want to think about, that's why contractors and builders have blueprints. They have a blueprint of something that they want to build. Well, think of the model as your blueprint, and you being the contractor of how you want to build that house, and that the client is actually the one that's going to get the end result of receiving their dream home, which just means they have a better body overall. And it's going to be very specific to their goals. And so I think when you explain things in more everyday terminology, then people that are going to question you, it takes the questions out of it, because they understand, oh, okay, I get it. So, there's approximately 29 muscles that make up the core. Why wouldn't we want to focus on those first when it's going to make you stronger? It's going to save your spine. Oh, okay. Whatever you say. And that's when it starts, whatever you say. And then just really focus on what you're programming and make sure it makes sense. Just fine.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's actually go into phase 1. So Marty, why don't you talk about this?
So this is, some of the goals. There's a lot of ways to speak to this. We know it as the stabilization endurance phase. Phase 1 doesn't mean the easiest. It just means where we start. And to me, this is one of the harder phases, because again, it's always going to be what's appropriate for that person. So you could be training for 10 years. And when we come back around to stabilization endurance, it's going to be a lot more challenging, even though the acute variables are going to be the same. It's just the exercises and things like that are going to be more challenging because of your ability to adapt over time. But here, right off the bat, teaches ideal movement patterns and skills, proper human movement, increases flexibility and joint mobility, will correct those muscle imbalances that you found in their assessments, improves muscular endurance and aerobic capacity. So great for people that are getting into fitness, or again, this is still good for people that have a higher level of fitness to come back through. Enhances proprioception, balance, and coordination, just makes you kind of better connected to your body and ability to move through different movement patterns. Definitely will help with confidence and adherence. Then the acute variables are going to be higher reps, because we're talking about endurance. So we're shooting between that 12 to 20. Lower weight doesn't mean easy. It just means appropriate for that 12 to 20. I should be eliciting fatigue between 12 and 20. If I'm eliciting fatigue at 8, it's too heavy. If I can do 27, it's too light. Slower tempo, because we're looking for time under tension. We're looking for the body to be able to control the eccentric motion or the deceleration of a weight. So you'll see 4, 2, 1. 4, the first letter or the first number is always the eccentric. The second is the isometric. The third is the concentric. The exercise may not flow that way. You have to convert it knowing as the fitness professional, which is the eccentric contraction, lengthening under tension, which is the concentric, shortening under tension. And then in the middle, the isometric is a pause or no motion, but the muscle is still under tension. So if you follow this and then have the right work to rest ratio in there, depending how you stack your program, a lot of time under tension. So when people say you only do 3 sets, yeah, but let's do the math, right? A 4-2-1 tempo is 7 seconds per rep. So if I do 12 at a minimum, that's 84 seconds of constant exercise. Not happen in the gym. Go put your stopwatch out, count somebody. They might do 8 to 12 seconds. And they're not doing the isometric, which is the second most force in the body. And they're not doing the eccentric, which elicits the most force within the muscle. So they're doing the 1/3 of it that's the easiest. So this is a game changer for people that have been working out, humbling. And this is a great way to start somebody who is newer to fitness.
And I think it's important. And so and just to kind of clarify too, I know many of you guys already know this, but just as Marty was saying, when he says you're going to have to understand a little bit about anatomy and prime movers, that's important because, for example, if you're doing a squat and you go and you grab weights and you wanted to do a body weight squat, and then you're holding on to dumbbells, so you're doing dumbbell squat, and you want to follow a phase 1 tempo, then you would actually be standing up, right? That's your starting position. You're not going down for 1, holding for 2, and coming up from that for 4, right? Right. You start going down for 4, hold at the bottom for 2, and then because a squat, the prime movers are your quads and your glutes, you come up for 1. And so it's not, quote, written backwards. This is written for consistency across the industry. And so it's not that NASM's trying to confuse you, but it's important for you to know that. And so if we just think about reversing that, if you're doing, let's say, a cable tricep push down, and you've got 2 cables in your, 2 handles in your hand, and you're starting at a 90-degree, position, of course, in the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints, and you push down, you're contracting your tricep. So you immediately start with the 1, hold for 2, and come out of that for 4 seconds. And so that's what we're saying. It's never written backwards. It's not always going to be you're starting with 1 or you're starting with 4. You have to think about what muscles are you trying to work, and when is that muscle truly being contracted, because that's your concentric, that's the number 1. And then when is it eccentrically loading? And so basically that's when you're going to think about coming up nice and slow. And another key point to that is most injuries occur when you're decelerating in the transverse plane. So learning to slow yourself down and being able to control your movement, no matter what plane of motion you're in, it really is going to help you long term to reduce the chances of injuries and falls and other horrible things that could happen.
Yes, we want to stay away from horrible things.
Horrible things. Yes, that's, if you're going to be quizzed on that, horrible things, that should be number 1.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
no, I was going to say, let's go into strength.
Yeah, once you get that ability to move well, the way I use it is now you've earned the right to move well under load. So Wendy, do you want to go over some of the goals here in that strength level?
Yeah, so basically this is going to cover phases 2, 3, and 4. And just to remind you guys, phases 3 and 4 are optional phases. However, they are very beneficial for a lot of your clientele, even though sometimes we think, oh no, people don't want to gain size and they don't want to have max strength. It really depends on the client. It depends on your programming, and it depends on what's in the best interest for your client. But overall, when you're thinking about the strength phases, so 2, 3, and 4, we're trying to increase the ability of the core to stabilize the pelvis and spine under heavier loads now through, again, whatever range of motion they can control. And so it's not that somebody needs to stop right at 90 degrees on a chest press, because that's not necessarily the case. If they're on a stable surface and they can go a little bit past 90, then let them go past 90. It's whenever they would start to compensate, you stop them before that, and then you complete the exercise. And so it's not just necessarily like you can only squat to 90, you only go down and chest press to 90, you only need to do this, that, or the other. It's whatever that client can control, because we want them to move throughout their available range of motion in life. So we need to train them that way. And so if we look at the other, specific bullet points here, it's going to increase. You're increasing the load. So there's going to be more load bearing on the muscles, the tendons, ligaments, and the joints. You're also going to be increasing the volume of training and the metabolic demand as well. But you also want to think too, when we're doing this, you're going to notice as the weight increases, our rep ranges need to decrease. And so therefore, what we're really trying to do is really focus on strength endurance, muscular development, so more kind of hypertrophy and size, as well as max strength. And so when we're thinking about it all together, these are the goals of strength altogether of why we do what we do. But we can go in now to specifically phase 2 when we start getting into our supersets and why that's important. So Marty, do you want to talk about the next one?
Absolutely. So when we look at the second phase for stabilization endurance, we go into strength endurance. So the key thing here is we do a superset on purpose. So there is a physiological outcome that we're looking for is when we look at the muscle fiber types, we've got the type 2 muscle fiber types, and we're lumping them all in as a whole. And then we've got the type 1 muscle fiber types. So after the warm up, after the, progressing through core balanced reactive, we get into the resistance training. I would do of course, I'm a guy, so I'll talk about chest press. I would do a dumbbell chest press at a 202 tempo for 8 to 12 reps. And then I would immediately, boom, flat out, as quick as I could, go into a stabilization exercise that mirrors the exercise I just did. So as fast as possible. So I could go to a push-up. I could go to all the different variations of push-ups. But now my goal is to do a 3-2-1 for 8 to 12 reps. So let's keep it at 10. So if I did 10 and 10, I've got 40 seconds worth of work on a strength, which I promise you in a gym, most people are not doing a 202 tempo. So that's even slower. But remember, they would have earned the right to get here. They would have started hopefully in phase 1. Then they go there, and then they do a 3-2-1 for 10 reps. So that's 6 more seconds per rep. That's 60 seconds, 100 seconds worth of work in probably no more than 105 seconds, because there's a small transition time, but it's not, hey, let me get a drink, I'll come back. No. It's as quick as possible. It is humbling. And there's a gentleman that I started working out with on Saturdays in the gym. He kind of found out what I did, and he's like, oh, I'd love to work out with you, Mike. Are you sure? And I said, because I'm following a very specific protocol. He's like, absolutely. And I'm in the 160s, he's 210, and I was crushing him in weight on the strength, as well as I was doing more push-ups on the stability part, because his body had never, ever been challenged like that scientifically. And now you can see how quickly he's going to gain, because he was doing more of the traditional gym science where he would lift and he worked hard, but there wasn't a specific plan of action, and he wasn't following acute variables. So he got some benefit, of course, but in the 2 to 4 weeks, 4 weeks now that we've been working out, he's so excited because all of a sudden now there's these new gains that he's getting because he never trained with the science.
And I think phase 2 it's the seller. I tell people that all the time. If you're trying to sell the model and you have somebody that really likes to work out, they're more, using the bar, they like to be on the stable surface. That's what they know. That's what they did in high school. That's what their coaches taught them. I think, okay, you do one thing that you want to do. I'm going to tell you how slow to do it. And then I want you to do something that I want you to do that's going to mimic those movement patterns. And so, just wanted to say that if you do have someone that's like, and they think that they don't need stability or anything, like Marty said, have them do a chest press at a 202 on using a bar on a bench, and then flipping them over, doing a 4-2-1 count push-up immediately with no break. That is super challenging, and that's very eye-opening. And so that's usually how you can, quote, sneak it in. And then after, somebody kind of gets the buy-in, then you can kind of lead more into phase 1. I mean, we don't want to just skip phase 1. However, they'll start to appreciate it. And if you do a stabilization and then you use maybe that bar, chest press as their client choice, and that you're going to help them do it safely, then that's another way and something just to keep in mind. And another way for you guys to think about it visually, because I'm a very visual person, think about phase 1 as a song. You're at a club, you're listening to a song, you're with your friends, you like the song, and then all of a sudden the DJ starts blending a song, and then with an easy transition, they're in a completely different song. Think about this as the DJ blending. Phase 2 is your blend. It is you're doing a strength and a stabilization. You're blending the two before you go right into hypertrophy. And that actually will lead us into the next slide. So when we're talking about hypertrophy and we're thinking about phase 3, we're really talking more about muscular development. And so we'll go ahead and look at the overall goals for muscular development. We are, again, focusing on high levels of volume. So we're looking for cellular changes. So that's where we're going to see growth. Now, one thing to think about, it's going to increase the stress on an anaerobic, anaerobic energy system, so both. However, this is, if you really want to see size, you have to think about your nutrition and your diet. In order to really grow, you have to have the calories that will allow you to grow as well as lift the amount of load. So this is where nutrition plays an important role, especially if you're a bodybuilder, and you guys that are bodybuilders know how specific your diet needs to be. However, if you're someone like me that eats just a certain amount of calories, but I really do want to get stronger, I want to see a little bit of changes, then still following these acute variables doesn't mean I'm going to blow up and look like a bodybuilder. And I think oftentimes that's why we want you guys to go through the phases, because you can still really reap benefits, but you have to think too of what is it that you're adding on, and if you want to increase size. And so, plus think about all the benefits that when you're lifting weights, you get, your bone density, like people, especially that are struggling with that, if they want to really focus on that, lifting heavy can help. However, if they didn't specifically go through phase 1 and 2, this is what we normally see people walk in the gym and start doing. They go in, they do one set, they lift as heavy as they can. Their form is not great. They're doing a 1-1-1 tempo. They're just moving weight, and then they're sore. They get hurt and they never come back. And so I think it's very important to make sure that you're adding rest periods when needed, and that you are focusing on what the client's goals are, and then adding in cardio and different things too, in order for them to elicit the benefits that this particular phase can have.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think this is one of those phases that people don't think they want, but once they go through the progressive model, by the time they get there, they have a whole different appreciation. And I think at that point they're ready for it. And to do it for 2 to 4 to 6 weeks is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, this is what we like to do. So Marty, you want to take us into max strength?
Sure. So just as the phase says, it's basically how much weight can you pick up safely, of course. But remember, they've earned the right. This should not be dangerous. People's like, oh, it's dangerous. Most times it is, because people walk in and they don't understand how to move properly. They've never learned how to control movement. They've never learned how to control their ranges of motion, their core stabilization. Yeah, it's more dangerous. By the time somebody that goes through the OPT model gets there, not dangerous. Now, this is optional. You're going to find some people that have had certain injuries, certain goals, then skip it. But if you decide to put somebody into it, safety should not be your biggest concern, because that doesn't mean I have to load the back with a back squat. That doesn't mean I have to do certain exercises, right? It can be dumbbells instead of a bar. There's ways to pick and choose your exercises. But once again, the person has shown the progression to have the right to do this phase of training for a short period of time, 4 or 6 weeks, maybe, not 4 to 6 years, or most men, 4 to 6 decades. So it's just, I've been there, done that. So this is a phase of training that is phenomenal, and feel free to modify it for your clients. It could be a seated chest press, because there's nothing wrong with earning some strength, because you never know what's going to happen in everyday life. So here we're looking at that heavier load near maximum intensity. This is obviously going to help the benefits of power training. Should cycle through 1 to 3, as I said, first, to get those private movement patterns and get the muscles and the nervous system ready for this. So we're going to increase the load and number of sets. The reps decrease. Rest interval will be full because it's a maximum strength exercise. You're going to give them 2-3 minutes plus to make sure that they're fully restored before they would go and attempt that lift again. Now, you see the tempo being XXX, and the reason is because we don't know how fast it's going to take them to move the bar or whatever the implement is, because it's incredibly heavy. So there shouldn't be a long pause, of course, but there's not a set tempo, because if we strip the weight away, they'd be moving explosively. So that's where we just put the XXX, because there's not a set tempo.
Yeah, when you're looking at it, and think about this, I mean, in your head, how many of you guys lift as heavy as you can? Your all circuits are firing, your brain, everything is saying go as fast as you can because you're trying to lift. But if you look at the person, it's like it's slow motion in the movement because it's so heavy. And so, yes, the XXX is, that's, people say, well, what does that mean? Well, we can't give you an actual number. However, when they're into this phase, just let them move as efficiently and as fast as they can, but you're going to notice that it's going to be a slow motion move. And then, and one thing I wanted to say here too, Marty, especially to any of you guys that want to train or that are currently training athletes, and it doesn't have to be professional athletes, it can be athletes of whatever, but if they're really trying to shoot to become or want to work with professional athletes, or you have someone going into a draft or a combine, then you really want to safely get them to phase 4, because if you can do that, they're going to be able to move better, lift more, and be more, they'll have more strength ability in order to really work on their numbers. So when they're sitting there and they're looking at you on paper and they can see how much you lift and how effortlessly it may have been, that could be a significant contract for someone. And so, that's why it's so important to get this subjective information in the beginning, their assessments, and really analyze the movement, and then say, okay, count backwards from the time that they have to go to the combines or whatever. How much time do you truly have in order to make sure that they can get through this phase of training, and therefore they're going to actually maximize, their ability to lift or do any of these things in the combines, because it's very cutthroat and it can be a substantial contract. Just want to throw that in there. So Marty, why don't we talk about phase 5?
Yeah, so this is another fun phase. And again, I'm going to date myself, but going back to when I got in the industry, I kind of focused on the term was powerlifting, but it really should have been called max strength lifting. We were bench, deadlift, and squats. There's a component, of course, to power, but so in the industry during the change now, you'll see more and more people doing high intensity training and a lot of explosive training, which is phenomenal. People tend to lose their ability to produce power very quickly. However, I was talking to a buddy of mine today. He's a pilot and he loves cars as well. And he called me up, and of course he had somebody give him advice in the gym. And, my buddy's in his mid 50s, just getting back into fitness. And he was talking about like heavy lifting and this, that, the other. And, I said, hey, don't you have an expensive, nice, fast car? He's like, yeah, like if it's out of alignment, and what would you take it on the highway and drive it incredibly fast? He goes, no. I said, why? He goes, at that speed, something bad could happen. I'd have to go get it fixed. I'm like, well, that's your body. So let's go back to what I taught you before. Stop listening to other people. Let's go through the phases of training. He's like, oh, I hate you. Right. Because, he got excited about doing this power training, but he doesn't move well yet. So we're going to get you here. We're going to get people to power training, but we're going to do it in that progressive manner, because when you move at high speeds and there's a chink in the biomechanics, as Wendy said, that's where the injuries occur at high speeds, changing directions, etc. So let's have people aspire to get to these power goals, but show them that there's a path. So when we get there, they are ready. And there's a lot of things that we're not even talking about, say why they'd be ready. But trust me, it's in there, and you'll see that in a lot of our other master instructor roundtables if you go back to when we talked about each phase. So here we're looking at the rate of force production, the speed of the muscle contraction. How fast can you get that muscle to fire? So power equals force times velocity. Again, we use a superset system here, just like phase 2. We start with a heavier exercise because of the all or none principle. If I go to pick up my bottle of water here, whatever muscle fibers are required to lift probably 6 ounces left, fire completely. I didn't fire every single muscle fiber or I'd be soaking wet right now and the bottle would be on the other side of the room. So most people in everyday life never get to 90, 95, 99+% of their muscle fibers firing. So that's why after the proper warm-ups, right, we're kind of jumping into the resistance training program here, is when they're warmed up and ready to go, we let them pick up a heavy weight, because now more muscle fibers in that movement pattern are forced to join the party. And then immediately, we then do a mirroring type of movement pattern as explosively as they can. So if we did chest, I would do 6 to 8, maybe, 1 to 6. Sometimes if I misjudge the weight, let them do 8, fine. But then I, peel it back to that 1 to 5 or 6 range. get all those muscle fibers activated. Then I have them throw a medicine ball against a rebounder or a secured wall, not just drywall. Or to me, if I feel that I can safely respond and catch that and throw it back to them. And that's usually about up to 10% of their body weight. So if you're dealing with a 200-pound individual, they could be chucking a 20-pound medicine ball. So make sure your facility is set up for that. Maybe plyo push-ups if they can do that. Band presses and things like that are a good alternative if you don't have the ability to throw things. But true power is an absolute release of an object and or jump, because if I'm doing band presses, at some point I know to start slowing my limb down, because I'm not going to throw my elbow into hyperextension. So it's better than nothing, but true power would be body weight jumps, body weight like explosive push-ups, or medicine balls work phenomenal. So with the acute variables, you'll see here 85 to 100% on that first exercise. And then the power is 30 to 45% at a very high speed. Rest, because of the metabolic demand, you're going to need to give them some rest, because I know there's people that do a certain type of fitness where you go and you go and you go and you go. Think about the degradation in the ability to move well. Think about what happens with form and technique. And then if I'm going and going and going, let's go back to the recipe. If I make these things into an endurance circuit, can I use 85 to 100%? No. So yes, I'm exercising, but I'm not training. So this is why you're going to see that 1 to 2 minutes, because we're looking to get that muscle fiber excited, then move it explosively. And then again, the tempo on both exercises is going to be XXX, because heavy weight, just as Wendy explains, is going to move slow, but we don't know what the tempo will be. And then when I'm exploding, it's going to be as fast as possible.
I think you make a great point too, because, when we hear about this high intensity exercise, I mean, Marty and I have also done another webinar specifically on that. There has to be a purpose, there has to be a goal, but even specifically, there is a specific rest period for high intensity exercises if that's what you're doing. And so are you doing a boot camp where it's just all about sweating, burning calories, and you're just doing exercises to exercise? Or to Marty's point, are you training for something specific? And when we utilize the model, we want you guys, again, to be creative and have fun. However, if you follow these specific adaptations, you are going to increase your power. So therefore, when you get into max power, so if you were to look at our PES or our quote phase 6, when we get into max power, it literally is 100% as fast as you possibly can control, especially if you really do want to work on high athletes, specifically elite athletes that have to train at a very high level, at very high speeds, and be able to change and have a lot of agility in multiple directions, on the drop of a dime. And so there is a point and a purpose to every one of these phases, and they all serve such a huge purpose. Marty, there's a question that I know is going to come up, so I'm going to go ahead and ask you the question, because we believe this philosophy, NASM still follows this philosophy. And when they talk about seniors, we say that ideally, phases 3 and 4 are optional. So why wouldn't phase 5 be optional, especially if you're working with a senior or healthy aging adult?
So the way I look at it is, to me, I know that the OPT model, from our background, we know who created this and where and how. It was for elite sports, but Dr. Clark understood that everybody's an athlete. So regardless of who I train you like an athlete. And what I mean by that is everybody has the capacity of stability or muscular endurance. Everybody has the capacity of strength, depends what phase I want to put you in. And everybody has the capacity of power. Your ability within those capacities is extremely wide ranging, right? I've had the privilege of working with elite athletes. I know you have, Wendy. I can speak for myself. You're probably a total different. I don't match their power output. I don't match their strength output.
I'm so close.
You might. Yeah, she's a beast, guys.
Have you seen me at the gym?
Yes, I'm intimidated. So again, my abilities within those capacities might be a lot more than my clients, or less, depending who I'm training. So even if I'm training a senior athlete, I am negligent if I don't train them to some level of power, because what if they step off a curb and have to regain their balance? So what it looks like to them could be totally different. And this is where I give you guys some flexibility. With a senior, I'm okay if you don't go 85 to 100%. Maybe you still let them do 8 or 10 reps, right? And maybe it's a seated chest press, and then I kindly hand my mom the medicine ball and she throws it to me and I hand it back to her. I don't just throw it back to her at high speed, because her level of power is not going to absorb that, right? So I train her in that capacity, within within her ability, knowing that I'm going to make some progress. And the one thing I can tell you is the senior population need power immensely, right? Think about if somebody falls, if they have never absorbed energy quickly, that could be life or death, right? We fall, we could, do kind of a plyo push-up, grab ourselves before our head hits the ground. They may not. Think if they stumble and they, catch their toe and they get their body out in front of them, can they quickly respond? So I encourage you to understand that power is essential for every single person. Earn the right, learn how to play around with this phase of training so it's appropriate for that person. And again, I just said band presses aren't ideal, but they may be for my mom. That might be enough for her just to start to learn to move quickly on a push and a pull, right? I'm okay with that. As long as you can explain to Wendy and myself why you're choosing that, we're going to be like, perfect. You're making a decision based on what you're seeing, but you're still working within the model best you can for that client.
Well, and I think that was the reason I wanted to ask that question too, is just to reiterate that you have to know your client, you have to know the end result, and you have to be able, by this time you've worked with your client, again, every 4 to 6 weeks, your body's going to adapt. And that's when you want to reassess and see if they're ready to move up, into a different phase, or a phase that's appropriate. And so you've spent, anywhere from, 3 to 6 months with these individuals. By the time possibly you get them to power, you know what they like, what they're capable of doing, and you know how well they can move and how fast they can move, because you've already kind of have an idea. And so have fun with the model, have fun with everything. But I challenge, and I know, Marty, you're going to back me on this, I challenge each one of you sometimes to take a step back, go back, truly do a true phase 1 program for yourself. It doesn't have to be 4 to 6 weeks, especially if you are like a fine moving specimen. But if you're not, and that you do have a few compensations, really taking yourself, and putting yourself back into a 4-2-1 tempo program that's unstable but yet controlled, and making sure that you're dialed and that you own it, and that the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints are totally lined up the whole time. It just makes you have more and more of an appreciation of what your clients are also feeling. Because I know when you've taken a break, if you've done it a while, but then, you've kind of played around with a few exercises, but you haven't truly put yourself through anywhere from a 3 to 5 a week program doing a phase 1 or even a phase 2, sometimes we forget about how hard it is and how sore you are, because you're trying to wake up muscles that sometimes, that have kind of gone on vacation. And that's why those compensations were occurring. So just remember, the acute variables really impact your program. That's what makes your program. And another reason why we really wanted just to talk a little bit about some of the fundamentals of each phase.
Without a doubt, the acute variables are crucial to the success of your programming.
Mm-hmm. And so when you think about the key takeaways, no surprise here, assessments are key. So you need to know how well your client can move so you can program accordingly. The OPT model, I know we've said this for 48 minutes, the OPT model really should be the blueprint. We talk about the assessments being your blueprint too, because it's going to help you design the right phase of programming, what's the right phase, as well as the right exercises based on compensations. But the model, again, that's where it comes back to, you've got the blueprint, you've got the construction worker, and then you've got the end result. So be the construction worker, follow the blueprint, and let your client have that goal being whatever it is, the end result. They hit that goal in the time that you think it's going to happen, because it's going to make you look better. They're going to be happy with their programming, and they're also going to want to continue to work with you because you are allowing them to hit goals, and they feel better, they look better, they're moving better, quality is there. 5 kinetic chain checkpoints, always think about that. Have a rationale for every exercise that you're doing. What is the purpose? Is it going to be beneficial? And at the end of the day, you have to have fun. Your clients have to love coming to see you. That's what I tell my clients. It's all about coming to see me. Let me be do your program. I'm going to make you hurt a little bit, but it's going to be a good time. And I'm telling you, you guys will have so much fun with your clients. The retention rate will increase. They're going to value you because you really have a good foundation and understanding of the purpose of a program. You're not just throwing exercises together, and it's really going to help your business.
Couldn't agree more, and that's why these key takeaways, are always the same, because there's so many things that just match up with this. So
Yes.
So, Wendy, I know we may get a couple questions, and I'm going to throw you a curveball, but you and I were just talking about this exciting news where you and I get to hang out again here soon and do some live stuff. Do you want to share that new exciting information?
I would love to. So we, meaning the regional master instructors, are getting together in Arizona for a couple workshops. They will be a 100% virtual for you guys. However, we'll be together so we can really focus on demonstrating and showing you guys the ins and outs of the corrective exercise model. So when we talk about everything from the different types of assessments, so transitional, mobility assessments, what you do with that information as kind of your the pre-workout to your resistance portion. And so we really hope if you guys want to be a part of that, you can find the corrective exercise workshops on NASM.org. You can sign up for it. Again, there's certain dates listed there. It's 100% virtual for you guys. You will receive continuing education for that. It is not free. There is a price with it. However, if you really want a more individualized personal workshop and you want to put up with Marty, Ken, and I, we would love to have you guys there and be a part of it.
I think it's more that you're going to put up with Ken and I for
exactly. You guys need just to come for moral support.
He babysits us a lot.
But it's so fun. And we would love to have you guys be a part of the workshops, because I think the workshops really do put it all together. It's kind of what we're doing now, but we're going to actually be able to show you. So show, tell, do. So therefore, if you guys have any questions with that, you would be able to ask us specifically.
Awesome. And I know that our contact information will pop up here in a second.
Mm-hmm. But if you guys want to find me specifically, you can email me at wendy.bats@nasm.org. Or as someone even said, they just found us both on Instagram, but you can find me on Instagram at wendy.bats13.
Awesome. And email here, marty.miller@nasm.org. And then our Instagram is dr.martymiller72. Feel free to email us. We're always looking for topics that you want us to bring out. So feel free to email either one of us. And then, like Wendy said, the CES workshop, we're excited to bring that in. Our podcast, the coffee talks, we're always reaching out to all of you because you are the most important part of our NASM family. So Wendy, as always, thank you. And thanks for everyone joining. We can't wait to see you again next week.